I'm sure you've heard the saying, work smarter, not harder. I'm sure you've also had opportunities when it seems like you're repeating the same steps or tasks over and over again to appreciate that being able to do it once would be faster, easier, and probably more effective. In Excel, we can perform the same actions or steps on more than one worksheet at the same time if we group the worksheets together. They can be grouped in several different configurations or several different ways if you want. Let's move down to the tab strip at the bottom of the screen. If we wanted to select, say, Boise to Seattle, those 4 worksheets, we can simply click on the first one, hold the Shift key, and click on the last one. Click, Shift, click, like everything else on our computer, selects the entire range. Let's click on the summary sheet, which deselects the other group. Now, if we want to select only portions of the tabs, maybe in this case Boise and Denver, then we can use click, Control click. By clicking on the first sheet, holding the Control key, and clicking on additional sheets, we're able to make a discontiguous selection. Again, this is something that you should be familiar with not only from working with Windows, but from working with contiguous and discontiguous selections in Excel worksheets as well. Of course, there is one other option, and that is to right-click and choose Select All Sheets. And that takes all of the sheets, regardless of how many there are, with fewer clicks. This can be especially useful if you have a lot of worksheets and would have to scroll to actually see all of them. Sometimes scrolling while trying to hold a Shift key can be very difficult. Once grouped together, though, regardless of how you get there, anything you do on the active sheet will also be applied to the other sheets in the group. This can include not only formatting, but also data entry of labels and even calculations. Let's say, for example, that we want to add some labels at the top of all of our worksheets. Instead of doing them one at a time, we've grouped them together, and now we simply have to enter them once. Let's say that we want to be able to identify what the data on these particular worksheets is for. We'll first make sure that our worksheets are grouped, which they are, and then click the cell in which we want to enter the label. In this case, it's A1. Let's type location. And because it's a label, I'll follow it with a colon. Then press Enter. Now in cell A2, we'll type last updated. Again, followed by a colon and Enter. The next thing we want to do is add some additional categories that need to be added to all of our worksheets. So we'll simply move down to cell A11 and again start typing our labels. These are going to be fairly simple. They include expense categories for internet, maintenance, lawn, and catering. Now, we would not want to enter the actual values at this point, unless, of course, the values were exactly the same for all of our locations. But one thing we do want to do before we finish up working with our grouped worksheet is to move over to the last column. It happens to be column O, and it's our annual expenses. This is actually a calculation that we now need to copy down to include the new rows. We know that normally in an Excel worksheet, if we have a calculation, like we do in cell O10, that all we need to do is use the fill handle to fill it down. The same skills apply even when working with grouped worksheets. In this case, we can fill it all the way down, and ultimately, when values are entered, the calculation will work as well. I always try to let you know that I went through the learning curve when I first used Excel as well. And even now, on occasion, I still have moments. One of the things that I'll try to give you a little hint or a heads up on is, at this point, don't forget to ungroup your worksheets. I sometimes get carried away and I've been doing all of this stuff, and then I'll start entering data, in this case thinking I'm working with Boise. But I'm not, because my worksheets are still grouped together. So we always want to make sure that when we're finished doing the common tasks, that we come down to the group, right-click, and choose Ungroup Sheets. You also can simply click on anything that was not part of the group. In our case, everything was grouped together, so we need to use the Ungroup option. You can now click through your different sheets and see that every one of them has all of the information that we just typed. We did this with a simple 5 worksheets, but it could be 500 worksheets. The point is that by grouping them together, We only had to perform the actions once instead of multiple times. It's, of course, hard to accurately estimate how much time we can save by grouping worksheets and performing actions only one time. While we all know that for the most part, time is money, it's in some ways even more important to understand that grouping is important because it reduces frustration and makes our workbooks more consistent, which in turn increases the professionalism of our work. Usually, with 2 or 3 simple clicks, we can group and accomplish things in one step instead of multiple times. And that, my friends, is definitely working smarter, not harder.